Okay, perfect. So we'll start. Happy Saturday, everyone. I'm Paulina Garza, the AIAS Latin America Regional Director. I welcome you to the Starting an Architecture Firm While Still Being a Student event. Before beginning, I would like you to inform you that this event is being recorded, and at the end we will have a space for Q&A. Thank you for being part of this event. We will start off with a small introduction of today's speaker. Pablo Garza is a young architect who graduated in spring of 2022 with an honorable dissertation from the University of Monterrey, Mexico. He has participated in several international academic programs, such as a satellite course in New York to propose a restoration of Lower Manhattan offices, a restoration proposal for the Bargio Art Museum in Dubai, and served as the Mexican ambassador to Mexico from the London International Model United Nations MUN Foundation. He also served as in the second chapter of AIAS UDEM in 2018. He currently is the owner of his own architectural studio in Mérida, Yucatan, Mexico. He has done work since late 2019. Plus, he also founded a food commercialization company in 2020. Pablo, this is now your space. Take it away.
Thank you very much, Val. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for being here on a Saturday. I know it's not easy. I know it's early. So thank you very much for being here. I'm just going to give you a few disclaimers just off the bat. This is not going to be a very typical presentation. I wanted to make it a bit more fun. It's going to be a bit more lighthearted because I know people sometimes, we can get bored at sometimes very repetitive things. So I think without further ado, I think we're going to start and let's get started. So we all know that architecture is hard. We know. I mean, by this moment, I think we've all been either here or the architects, or we met an architect, and we know that the career isn't very easy. It's not one of those that you just do just to see if it works out. I mean, you really have to love it in order to really be there. We've all been through situations where the professor just casually asks for 30 more drawings the day before, or he pretends to hate your design when actually he loves it, and then he copies it in something else. If I seem offended, that's because I am, and that happened. Or they just throw your model that you worked 14 hours last night against the window. That also happened. So anyway, I think we can all agree that if you don't love it, then you're in the wrong place. We've all been to the situations like this one, or maybe like either of these two. I know Pau has been. But in the end, if I can give you any advice at all, is to keep on dreaming. There was this quote that I heard from, I think you've probably seen it. It was very, very famous. It's from Matthew McConaughey. It was in his 2018 Oscar acceptance speech. And I think it was one of the most amazing quotes I've ever heard. And they asked him, Matthew, who's your hero? And he said, well, who's my hero? And he thought about it and he came back to them. He said, well, my hero is me, 10 years away. And he asked him why. And he said, well, the thing is, you can only compete with yourself. So if your hero is yourself in 10 years, then your hero is always going to be 10 years away. So he said, he's always going to be chasing your hero. I'm never going to be my hero, but that's part of growing. And that's the only way you can compete with only yourself and really get better and better and better every single time. So I'm going to give you a bit of context. Who is Pablo? He's a young architect, recently graduated from the University of Monterrey. He's a former ambassador to Mexico for the Lyman Foundation. He was selected to participate in satellite courses both in Dubai and New York. He served at the second ever IS chapter at UDEM. He's an entrepreneur with the perseverance of a Jehovah's Witness. At 23, runs a commercial food company and an architecture studio, and clearly doesn't have an ego. Now, I'm going to tell you a bit of my journey, and it will be brief, don't worry. But I think it will give you a bit of context into why I'm saying the things I'm saying today, and it being not just another topic or another, speaking, whatever. It'll give you a bit of a knowledge of why my experience has been as it has been. So it'll be brief, don't worry. So it all starts back in 1999, where the little boy was born in Monterrey, Mexico. Now I saw Pau's face, so yeah, that is a joke. It actually started in 2017. And in 2017, I think I made one of the most important choices in my life, and that was to become an architect. And I tell it as it is, and I say it's one of the most important choices in my life because I think what you're going to study, if you make the right choice, if you make the right choice of what you're going to work for the rest of your life, you'll never work a day in your life. And you will really love every single moment that you do what you do. And in the end, in 2017, I made the choice to become an architect and really embrace the suffering. And I think it has shaped me and my personality for the rest of my days. I think it's been an incredible experience that has taught me so much in so little time. And it has really shaped the opportunities that I've gotten along the way. So I think architecture itself is sort of like a roller coaster. And believe me, this picture was chosen for a very particular reason, not only because it's a roller coaster. Throughout school, it's this roller coaster of emotion. So I think us architects, we've been through that. We start first semester and you're very excited. You can't wait to be an architect. You can't wait for everything you're going to do. You're very excited. Then comes second semester, you're even more excited. You're finally learning how to do stuff for real, not only drawing. Then comes third semester, and then you get really excited because now you're using AutoCAD and Revit, and you're finally designing things. It's not only drawing anymore, you're finally designing things. And then comes fourth semester. And that's, I think we can agree, it's always a bit of a tumble because it's the first time that teachers really squeeze you. And I would call it the first filter. And normally, a lot of people at that point say, well, it's not for me, and they get out. But if you hold through, you get what I call the semester of false hope, which is fifth semester, which normally is really great because you start doing your social work, or you start even working for someone, and you feel like this false sense of security. Then you have the bit of a squiggle that is sixth semester, which normally is just really weird because you're either halfway, but you're not there yet. You still have a lot to learn, but you've learned a lot. So it's sort of a weird semester, I would say. Then you get seventh, which is, the realization that you still have a lot to learn. And then you get eighth, in which you start getting really excited because you're really close to that special 10th semester in which you'll finally get your piece of paper that says that you survived. Then you get ninth semester, in which you realize that your dissertation, which you have to turn in 4 months, is not even close to done, and you are 8 months away from actually getting it done. So you have to do 4 months work, 8 months work, in about 4 months. But then you get to your wonderful 10th semester, in which you realize that everything you've done was worth it, even if you ended up in the same place you started. And you got to do it again. And that's life, because after you graduate, believe me, this cycle goes back again, but now in your business. As a first year, second year, third year, fourth year, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth, and 10th. Same way. And that's just how it works. And this roller coaster, again, I chose it because it represents how our careers are structured and how it's no coincidence that they're structured like that. Because essentially, this is just how life is going to be. So for all those who thought that this whole roller coaster of emotions through our careers was just a coincidence and was just because, no, it was preparing us for what was to come. So one of the most important things, and by looking at this wonderful analogy made by yours truly, it's no wonder that it's hard to stay motivated. But there is one key thing that will make things so much easier along the way. And that's this really basic, really important work-school-life balance. And it's really quite simple. And I'm not going to be a hypocrite. It has been really tough for me, and I think it's tough for everyone. But this phrase will honestly make anything so much easier. Now, what do I mean by this specifically? Now, school is obviously very important. And while you're a student, that's your priority. But you cannot sacrifice both life and work. Now, work doesn't necessarily mean, actual job. Doesn't mean you have to work for someone. doesn't mean you have to do your thing. It can also just simply be doing something else outside of school, whether that work be playing golf, whether that work be playing tennis. It could be whatever you want, but it has to be something that requires work outside school. Then obviously you have to focus on school. You have to get decent, good grades. And if there are any teachers in this conference, they'll probably hate me for saying this, but you have to get decent grades. You know, it's not always about getting the best grade. You just have to get decent grades, decent enough that you'll get the opportunities that you need, and you'll have time left to do this other stuff. Because any single one of these in excess is bad. If you focus too much on work, you'll let the others two down. If you focus too much on school, you'll let work and life down. And if you focus too much on life, well, you'll spend every single night at a disco. So that's also not good. But what I mean also by life doesn't really just mean going out, but it means connections. If I were to say any other thing that's more important than your career, so your career is obviously very important. You learn that, you learn how to be an architect, you learn everything you need to know, supposedly, to go out there in the real world. And I'll get back to that later. But there is something that is fundamentally more important than anything else you're going to learn in college, and that is connections. The people you meet along the way will decide the fate if you're successful or not in the future. And I know sometimes we like to think that we can do it by ourselves, so we don't need anybody else. But I'm sorry to tell you, that's not true. The people you meet along the way are extremely vital for what is to come afterwards. And if you wish to start through your whole journey, even before you graduate, then it's even more important now. So again, if you decided to now finally work, well, you have really two options. You can work for someone else, or you can do your own thing. Both have their disadvantages and advantages. So for example, I mean, working for someone else, obviously you have several advantages, like working on someone else's dollar. So if you mess up, someone will clean it up, that it's not you. You'll also get the opportunity to learn from an experienced group of people. So, and you'll get to participate in probably larger projects than you would if you were to do your own thing. Now, this also has its disadvantages. I mean, it's less flexible in doing your own thing. You're really constrained in the creativity you can have. But again, you have to weigh which one is better for you. Now, if you do your own thing, it does have its advantages as well. So you're very flexible. You can be very creative. You can genuinely innovate and do your own thing, and you don't have to be similar to anybody else. And as well, it helps your brand. So any portfolio that you do get by yourself is definitely more valuable than the portfolio that you would get with another firm, because that portfolio shows your customers that it was you, that you yourself actually got that project through, did everything how it's supposed to be, and turned in a wonderful and complete project to the client. Now, it does have its disadvantages. One being, well, social life definitely reduces because you have to take care of a lot of things. Also, it's your risk. You have to take higher risks, and you have to have a higher risk tolerance. But there's one other thing that is extremely important. And I'm not here to tell you one or the other. There is very good arguments for either one, and it's really going to decide on your personal choice and what skills you're willing to develop. So there is one skill that we can't just skip. I mean, if you really want to do your own thing, there is one single skill that you cannot skip. If this doesn't sound like you, or you don't want to learn this skill, honestly, I mean, you should just stop here. And that is, well, it's really a cabal of skills. It's people skills in general. So what am I talking about? I'm talking about negotiation, talking about persuasion, I'm talking about public speaking, itself, just conversation. Those are more important, I would say, for starting your own business than any other thing you can learn. You cannot sell a fantastic product without good marketing. You can sell a bad product with good marketing. Now, I'm not saying that you should sell a bad product. I'm just trying to make a point in which marketing, which really comes down to people skills, really comes down to understanding the psychology of your client, is by far the most important thing you can do as a business owner, whatever the phase you may be. And sometimes when you're a student, it's even more complicated because you will get, I wouldn't say discriminated, but you will get, in a way, a bit of put aside. You know, the moment you do get a client, and we'll talk about finding work a bit later, but the moment you do get a client, it's going to be very difficult for you to prove to that client that you'll do the same quality of work as a studio that's been there for the past, I don't know, 5-10 years. So it's going to be really based on your marketing, because anything you can show the client, he's already on that upper hand. So he knows that in a way, he's got the upper hand on you. So he's going to try to bring you down and bring you down. And you have to find a way through conversation to kind of evade those tactics and kind of punch back in a very gentle way. And that essentially is what selling and conversation is all about. And that's why I say it's one of the most vital skills, because you need to know how much you need to pressure him. You need to know when to stop. You really need to have a strategy to how to talk to every single client. And every single one is different, but it's something that in general is very important. So I guess now, I mean, we've seen that this is more important. I guess that by this point, you've realized that you need to learn this. So you've learned this. Now comes finding work. How do we find work as a brand new studio or as a student opening a studio? Well, it really comes down to something that's very simple and very difficult at the same time. So if I had to summarize the whole thing in 2 words, it'll be never overthink. It's really that simple. Now, it's very easy to say it. It's very difficult to actually implement it, because as humans, we're hardwired to overthink pretty much everything. We look at the 1,100 different options that could happen when we speak to a client. What I would tell you, and probably the best advice I can give you here, is don't overthink it. Just go for it. I mean, there is no lost opportunity but the one that you didn't even want to try. So I would say just go for it. And it's really about, you know, knocking on the most amount of doors possible. I mean, you know, when I was describing the entrepreneurship and the Jehovah's Witness analogy, I mean, I didn't mean it as a joke, but it really is sort of that. I mean, you have to go to every single door and knock the door. If not, you won't get jobs. I mean, it's that simple. Out of the first 100 that you knock, you probably get 1. But that 1 will propel you so that the next 100, you'll get 2. And the next 100, you'll get 3, and so on and so forth. So it really is about never giving up. Don't overthink it. Go for it. And it really will become simpler than you think. Now, when finding work, it's also very important to have a very decent structure. So it's very important for you to have, to know exactly what you're going to charge your client and why. Most importantly, why. You can't just charge your client just because, you know, you can't say, oh, I'm great, so I'm going to charge him a fortune. It's not how it works. You have to particularly see how you're going to charge your client and why you're going to charge him that. And now I know it's very easy to say, but it's very hard to actually do it. So I'm going to go into a bit of a structure with you guys. For example, let's say you have your first client. Now, your first client is always going to be either, let's be realistic, either a family member, a friend, or someone you know. And that's okay. I mean, that is how you start, and that is pretty much how you do things. And I'm going to be perfectly honest with you. You're not going to charge them much. And that is also okay. Because the reality of the matter is the first clients you get, they're really sort of a testing ground, you know? So you can see, you know, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? We go back again to whether working for someone else or working by yourself, in which you need to perfect those skills. So logically, if you're starting out by yourself or with a team, you're going to mess up, and you're going to mess up a lot. And you can't get frustrated with that. I mean, that's going to happen. And again, there is not much you can do. You're going to mess up. So don't keep thinking and putting things off because you're going to mess up, because you will. Going back to the client, you need to learn how much your work is worth. And now I know architecture is quite subjective, and that makes it very complicated to charge. I mean, hell, I've been working for 2.5 years now, almost 3. And for us, it's really still very difficult to charge. I mean, it's something that is an eternal problem and that you'll always have. But if you're really set on what your work is worth, you can negotiate. And that's when one of the skills comes in, which is very important, which is negotiating itself is very important. And not only the price, I'm not telling you should, heckle the price and either go down or just stay. You should always be very flexible, especially in payment methods and in timing as well. Remember, if your client is a developer, well, for them, time is money. So if they can pay you, for example, in different installments, well, that might be more attractive to them. For another client, it might be easier to pay you upfront. For another client, it might be easier to pay you in a service. You have to be flexible, especially at the beginning. And it's the only way in which I can guarantee out of those 100 doors that you knock, instead of one, if you're flexible, maybe you'll get 3. And you'll say, Pablo, well, I mean, that's just 2 more. Yeah, but look at it percentage-wise. Percentage-wise, it's a 200% increase. Now, imagine any company in the world that would tell you, just by changing one single thing, you can get a 200% increase in sales. They would be over the board with happiness. So if this is something that you can change from one day to the next, just by learning a few people speaking skills and just by being flexible, well, I think I can get to the point and I can see, where this is going. So now let's look at, why we will get scrutinized. Okay, so there is a very, very harsh stereotype on architecture students. Okay, and for us, it's really we don't understand it as students because we see our projects in school and we look at them and they're incredible and we might even win a competition or a prize, or maybe that teacher who really, really hated our projects loves this one. So we feel like we accomplished and that we're very, very, very valuable, let's say that way. But in the end, we know that every project just leads to a yes or no. So all of this is really irregardless. When you get to a client specifically, you have to really, again, know what you're selling and know how you're going to sell it. Because if not, we can be certain that the only thing we're going to get is a no. Even if your project is the most amazing thing, even if you have the greatest renders, you need to know what you're selling and you need to know how to sell it. So I would recommend, again, going back to these 3 skills: negotiation, communication, and this one, which we haven't touched on much, networking. Architecture is a very people-oriented skill. So even though we, boast of designing spaces and we go into very in-depth into, the visuals, architecture itself is people-oriented completely in every aspect of the way, from sales to actually, taking advantage of the project and actually leading the project, to turning the project in and to actually realizing the project in real life. So networking is one of the most important things that you'll learn throughout your career, and you need to take advantage of it. So never, ever, 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 think that, oh, I'm not going to talk with that person because I don't know if I'll like them. Big mistake. Talk with as many people as you want. Talk with as many people as possible. Meet as many people as possible. Go to conferences, go to symposiums, go to anything which will give you a bigger network. Because again, the networking essentially will give you the doors. The doors I was talking about previously, that's your network. So if you have 100 doors, well, you'll get, again, 1 to 2 sales. If you have 200 doors, well, now that it's double, 300, triple, so on and so forth. I think you get the point. So networking is by far some of the most important thing you can do in your career path. And it honestly will be night and day, especially if you're trying to do your own thing. Now, again, this is specifically for trying to do your own thing. If you want to work for someone else, well, these things don't really matter as much. I mean, they're always good to have, but they're not vital. For doing your own thing, I would say they're completely vital. And these 3 things, if you really learn how to master them, they will genuinely help you overcome some of the most daunting challenges that we get along the way. They'll help you, overcome very harsh clients, which you will have, very difficult clients. You will have very, harsh people, because in business, I mean, there really is no mercy. I mean, if you thought that your professor in architecture wasn't very nice to you, believe me, you'll have a surprise when you go out in the world. So these three things will really help you out and make things just so much easier for you. And I think with this, we come to pretty much the conclusion of this whole presentation, which is being an entrepreneur and an architect. When you're trying to do your own thing, when you go out there at the world, when you try to, take the world by storm and take a giant bite out of the pie, there is no way to be just an architect. You have to be an architect and an entrepreneur. You have to have that business mindset, because if not, I'm sorry to tell you, but being an architect is not enough. And I know that sounds very harsh, but it's just not enough. The world is a very difficult place, but it's also a very rewarding place, in where every single experience that you get teaches you something new. And that something new, you'll just accumulate and accumulate and accumulate. Now, what you do with that experience, that is the entrepreneur part. Someone who's not an entrepreneur will probably just say, okay, I've learned this, but that's it. I'm not going to use it anymore because, well, I'm too lazy or I don't want to. Being an entrepreneur means taking that experience and taking advantage of it, and next time using that experience, not letting the same thing happen to you again. And believe me, that by year 2, you will have been through so much before that you will be a completely different person. Even if you're a student, you would have that value that a 5-year, 10-year architect has. Because it all comes down to this, to being an entrepreneur and an architect at the same time. And it's very difficult, because sometimes those mindsets, they clash. They're not cohesive. Sometimes the architect in you would say, no, don't upload that picture, don't upload that render until it's perfect. But the entrepreneur in you is saying, well, time is money. If you don't upload it now, then it'll go further and further and further. And as architects, we have that problem. We have that addiction to perfection, which sometimes hampers our ability to actually be successful. And it's something that's really hard because it's embedded into our minds. But again, I know I've given about 3 advice that I said that if I had to give any advice, I would give this. But I think the 3 of them are really important. And this is the last one. If I had to give you any advice, well, again, I think it sort of matches to the previous one. But don't overthink it. Just do it. If you're happy enough with it, they always say, like, if you can observe it a long time, if you can look at it a long time, and you take a long time to find the defect in it, then it's postable. Then it's publishable. And I would say just take that mentality and use it to your whole business model. Go out there, and if it's good enough that you take a long time finding the defect, then it's good enough to publish, and it's good enough to put out there. So don't think it, just put it out there. And believe me, things will change. Now, finally, I'll just give a bit of an introduction. And I mean, I would like to just plug in our design philosophy at Form and just a bit of what we do, because I have a little bit of time left. And well, I want to really, show you my creation because I'm really proud of it. So those who are asleep, please wake up. This is the most important part. If you didn't hear everything else, this is what you're here for. So there we go. At Form, we believe that form and function can live in harmony. That the only way to create architecture that truly changes life is to find ways into integrating into the mainstream. So development, lower income projects, etc. And finding a design language that is cohesive all throughout the project. Creating a unique experience that transmits the sensation of a whole new design language every time we decide to inhabit a space. At Form, we don't design spaces, we design experiences. And the space is only a part of a much broader picture, one in which one fundamentally changes our livelihoods and how we experience it. That's why here at the foundation of Reimagined Mundane Moments, we seek to change that commonality and reimagine it as something extraordinary. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Pablo, for your participation and collaboration with AIAS Latin America. We will now move on to the Q&A space. So we invite all the participants to raise your hand and unmute, or you can also send your questions in the chat. I will start off with one question. So, I mean, I know you from architecture school, and I remember that one time that we were in finals, you were in a car crash. So how do you think that that like shaped your like kind of philosophy or view on architecture school and right now up to the date?
That's actually, thank you. That's a very good question. And I think that's a story that if I had a bit more time, I would have gone in depth to, because some of the thing I mentioned, you know, when I mentioned the school work-life balance, that's really what it comes down to. My fourth semester, which was when I was in a car crash, it was, I mean, thank God it wasn't too bad, but it was a bit of a wake-up call because I actually fell asleep on the road. And it really showed me that you really had to have that life balance in your work and in school and everything else. Because again, I mean, what good is having the perfect project if you're dead? I mean, so I know it sounds a bit blunt, but that's pretty much what it is. So I think it really helped me see that perfectionism wasn't the way to go. That sometimes you needed to say, enough is enough. This is good enough. I have to put this out there, or I have to turn this in because it's good enough. I don't have to go that extra mile, because normally that extra mile, you'll do 10% of progress in 90% of the time. And that is the reality for most projects. So even if you spend 90% more time, you'll just do 10% of the progress. So you really have to weigh things in if that's worth it. And I think that car crash for me was the wake-up call I needed, that wasn't the way to go. And I really think that it probably, if I wasn't in that car crash, I may have never been able to, you know, put myself out there and start my business, because it would have never been ready.
Yeah, I think that's so important to find like the work balance as well, because obviously like there's a ton of architecture students that are just like wanting to hand in the perfect project and they just don't sleep. They pass days like sleeping like 3 hours or something like that. And it's obviously that what you say of having like that balance, it's just so important, and people sometimes don't realize that. So moving on like to another question, how do you choose like who to work with? I know there's always like this conflict of like maybe you want your friends as well like to kind of evolve through all of this and have like maybe the same opportunities as you do, but like deep down you just know like you just don't work as well with them as you would like maybe with another person. So how would you recommend like putting that line between like friendship and kind of like work or projects? What do you recommend?
Yes, that's also a very good question that I didn't go in depth to, because it's a bit of a touchy subject. But I started Forum 2 years ago with two of my best friends from architecture. And I thought that we had the same vision, right? I thought we wanted the same things. We had the same vision. And sometimes to assume things is pretty much the worst thing you could do. I mean, you really have to know what your people are about and what they want in life. Because if you assume they want the same thing in life that you want, then you'll be in for a surprise, believe me. And I think that's what happened. I think we never really talked through what we wanted in life. So in the end, I mean, I still love them to death. They're incredible people, but they just wanted different things. And again, that's okay. You know, I think people have their timing. Sometimes people are in a rush, either to work in some specific place or to start their own thing because time is catching up. The reality is it's not. I mean, you got time. We're still young. I mean, and don't let that that desire to, you know, to get ahead of time ruin the moment you're living in right now. So I think that if we would have talked about that 2 years ago, I think it would have probably been better for for both parties. I mean, they would have probably pursued what they wanted before, and I would have probably saved a lot of, I don't know, fighting or even just discomfort that I had throughout the process. So I think that's really important. Whenever you want to work with someone, friendship doesn't necessarily mean a good business partnership. And I think that's really important to state. I think that's really important to know. And in the end, again, if you know that, if you've gone into a business partnership with your friend and you're seeing that it's not working, honestly, the best advice I could give you there is just talk about it as soon as possible. Don't let it drag out, because it'll get worse, believe me. And it'll get harder and harder every single time. Talk about it. And it normally will end up in a situation in which one of you, whichever it may be, just messes up very badly. And that that knocks you down pretty hard. And honestly, I don't want to be dramatic, but it could be the end of what you built. I mean, you can get back up and start again. I mean, that happened to us, but it could be the end of what you built. I mean, that is something that's very important. And I think that's a very good question.
Yeah, of course, that's super important. Sometimes people just since they're friends, they just want to keep on like working together, and it's not like working, but you still like push it. And it's super important what you say, to like talk about it, and if not, like it's okay to go on separate ways. You don't have to like force things. So again, if anyone has any questions, like please go ahead. I would like to ask as well something else. So I know like you're from Mérida. You came to Monterrey, Mexico, like to the Universidad de Monterrey to study. And then now you're back. So how did you like how has that like trajectory like marked you as a person? Like going from your hometown to study to another place and then going back to like open your businesses there. How has that shaped you? And I don't know, like if you have like any recommendations, why not maybe stay where you study? Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Well, it's actually a very good question. I am from Monterrey, so I was born there. I lived for 12 years before leaving and then going back. So it was actually very easy to go back because, I mean, when I was thinking about where to go to study, I actually had a couple of options in the UK. And since I studied my 1 year high school there, it was really easy for me to go because I had recommendations and letters. And I just knew it had to be abroad. I needed to, and I think I would recommend that to anyone. You have to study at least for a couple of years abroad. It teaches you so much about self-reliance. It teaches you so much about knowing how to balance your work. And I'm not saying it's something simple. It really teaches you how to do these things in a really harsh way, but it does it in the end. So I think, this flip-flopping between Monterrey and Merida, I think in the end, when I started Form, I had a ton of opportunities in Merida. So I had a lot of known people in Merida. And again, I knocked on doors, and coincidentally, just doors in Merida were answering more often. And that's where you have to make a business decision as well as to, where I'm going to start. It's going to be where the opportunities are. And you really need to be very cold when taking that decision in saying, well, the opportunities are here. I may want to be somewhere else, but if the opportunities are here, I've got to be here. Okay. And that's something very important. And that's something that you've got to make the most of every single situation. So my advice would be never, never close your mind to any option, ever. If you have to go to New York because you got opportunities in New York, well, then go right ahead. If you got to go to anywhere else in the world, then go right ahead. You're young. I mean, if you're studying, I'm guessing this advice is for people our age or even younger. I mean, you're young. You can do these things. Not long after, you're not going to be able to do it. because then you have family and other things you got to worry about. So for now, take advantage of it, make the fullest.
Of course, that's something super important just because there's a lot of people that like don't want to leave like their comfort zone and all of that. And obviously like pushing yourself and actually like going a bit far and like all of that to another city, country, wherever, it actually makes you like way more independent than like you think. You really like those qualities really like stand out and it makes you just like way better person. Um, so what would be if you had to like finally like give one tip, what would it be?
One tip. Well, as you can see, I kind of struggled with that because I said I was going to give one and I gave like five. But again, I think if I were to summarize it all, I think the most important one, because I think the one that plagues us all, whether we're architects, businessmen, anything, don't overthink. Don't overthink. It really is that simple. You'll lose so many opportunities. And I'm not saying I'm not guilty of it. Of course I am. I mean, I'm not going to be a hypocrite. But it's something that I've tried to work on, and it's really hard. Believe me. I mean, it's sometimes it's so simple. Like you want to upload a render to your page because you know that render will probably gain some traction, might even get you a new job. But then you start looking at the little details. Oh, is it perfect? Is it this? Is it that? And you don't even stop to think that Instagram compresses renders. So most likely what you're thinking about won't even be visible. And it's just those stupid things, sorry for the word, but those stupid things that sometimes prevent you from getting the greatest opportunities. So just stop and do. I mean, I'm not saying don't think it through. Obviously, you have to think it through. But once you've thought it once or twice, believe me, third, fourth, fifth, sixth time, etc., normally is not necessary.
Yeah, totally. Thank you so much for that like last
Thank
tip.
you.
I
No,
know
thank
it
you
sums up
for the
like
opportunity.
everything. I don't know if anybody has any questions.
I think people are asleep. But...
Okay, so with this, we end the Starting an Architecture Firm While Still Being a Student event. Obviously, special thanks to Pablo Garza for his energy and time and like for taking the time to make this fun presentation. Sometimes it's very hard to actually like keep people engaged. And thank you for making this possible. So where can people find you?
They can find us either at form.mx, so that's FORMM.mx, or Form Creative and on Instagram, or Form just on Facebook.
Amazing. So we thank each and every one of you as well for attending the meeting. You can also follow at AIAS Latin America on Instagram to stay tuned for the next events. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Pablo. Thank you everyone for being here.